Welcome back, everybody. The gods have decided that I was too powerful. After failing at every turn to thwart my increasing success and ravishing good looks, they were forced to conspire with the laws of physics themselves in an effort to put so much as an obstacle in my path. The hard drive containing all my work for the next video, as well as the files for all my old videos, released and unfinished, a lot of personal memories like clips and screenshots from my first time playing Hollow Knight, Smash Bros games with my family, Animal Crossing during COVID, and more, has suffered a mechanical failure. I would have loved to put more examples as B-roll in this video so you could see what kind of files are now gone, but they're now gone. All the files are now inaccessible, and due to the type of hard drive I have, data recovery will likely cost over $3,000. Some people have suggested that I start a GoFundMe to cover that cost, but even though the purpose of the GoFundMe would be to recover my lost personal files, the nearly hour-long video that I was so close to finishing, and some footage and assets for at least 2 of the next videos, I am terrified about what could happen if a certain business interpreted it as me trying to crowdfund a fan project. For search engine reasons, I'm not going to dwell on this topic, and I'm going to ask you not to discuss it in the comment section either. So what happened to the hard drive, and why is it so expensive to recover when services like $300 data recovery exist? Well, here's the story. At around 3 a.m. on the morning of Friday, November 15th, when trying to switch between my laptop and my PC to find a specific bit of footage for the video, I knocked my external hard drive off my desk. Usually I think it's pretty cool to irreversibly damage people's hard drives, but when I plugged it in and saw that it didn't work, I suddenly remembered that this one belonged to me, and I realized that this was actually bad. While looking at problems with the hard drive, I was careful not to try and do any write operations to it, which would have been the equivalent of throwing it in the blender. So I had some hope that the data could still be recovered. But then I called one of the data recovery labs nearest to my location. They told me that because I was using a helium drive, and because that helium drive suffered a mechanical failure, there is no hope. As it turns out, helium is good for lifting everything except the chances of data recovery. They said that helium drives are pretty new, extremely fragile, and that nobody in the world knows how to recover the data from them. Now, they did also mention that some labs are experimenting to find ways to recover the data from this type of hard drive, so I figured that I could maybe keep the hard drive on a shelf for a few years and wait for the recovery technology to catch up. But then I began wondering how long that would actually take, so I ended up calling again a bit later to ask if they might be able to make some kind of estimate. The man on the phone said that helium drives have actually been around for 9 years, and right now they are decreasing in popularity. This was extremely relatable, and my new sense of kinship with helium drives almost made me forgive the concept of them for being bad. But the fact that helium drive technology is going out of style means that there will be less and less funding and reason to continue experiments. So new breakthroughs are extremely unlikely, and he told me that I didn't really have any hope. But then, after saying all that, he gave me one bit of hope. He told me about one man in Portugal who might be able to help. I reached out to this guy, and he asked me a couple questions, including what exact model I have. I sent him a link to the page that I ordered from. His response? Absolute joy. This man started frolicking with excitement. But for real though, he said that he just barely finished fixing one for a guy from Italy, and it was a nightmare to work on. I asked him what made this specific model of helium drive so much worse than the others, and he said that while the fact that it's 18 terabytes definitely doesn't help, the real problem is that the model itself actively tries to prevent data recovery. Not to mention, and I quote, "It's hard to find donor parts as only 3 idiots in the world use them." Can I call you Sensei? I feel like I should say, "I'm sorry, Sensei." It sucked to hear that the drive was essentially the worst case scenario, but the detail that really caught my attention was that it was possible. The plan that Sensei gave me was to send the hard drive to a more local data recovery place, have them examine it, check if the recovery was possible, then send it back to me. If they felt it's possible, I'm supposed to send the hard drive to him in Portugal, along with another duplicate hard drive so they can either take parts from it or move the data to it. And if they are successful in recovering the data, then the fee they charge is about $3,000. So my options are pay $3,000 plus all of the shipping and duplicate device costs, or remake the video from scratch. I would normally choose the latter, considering that it's $3,000, but I'm out of time. Grazi's map is finished, and for several reasons, I need to be working on adding the Datapack to it yesterday, which means that my options are actually pay $3,000 plus all the other fees, or this video doesn't exist, and about 5 months of my life from this year alone have been for nothing. Not to mention all of my other lost files. Moving forward under the assumption that these files will never be recovered, I want to show you what remains of the lost video. Because I'm terrible with file management, I stored the project file separately from the actual footage, so I can still show it to you along with a few clips that I found in the editor's cached footage. Also, you remember that big announcement I've been talking about? Because I already edited, rendered, and uploaded it to YouTube to show some friends and get their opinions on it, I still have the ability to show it to you all, just with slightly worse quality. Now, as you might imagine, this is what the project file looks like. It's a bit of a graveyard, but the first section was magnesis. In this section, I showed how I changed the magnesis lasers from this to this. Some math was involved, but I don't think I've ever done a better job at giving the exact right amount of math explanation to get the idea across without being boring. And then I showed how I changed it from that to this. Overall, this section was one of my favorites that I've ever done. And if you look here, it had some very fun animations that I was really proud of learning how to make. The next section talked about the new master cycle controls that became possible in one of the recent snapshots. This one was unlike any of the other segments I've made before, mainly going over what happened the day that the old WASD detection system broke up to the day that the replacement was added. Come to think of it, it was pretty similar to some parts of this video. You know, I felt unsure about this segment, considering how different it was for me, but I had shown it to a few other friends one day before the hard drive crashed, and without me even bribing them for good reviews this time, they said it was A, funny, and B, engaging. So take that as you will. Going through this more quickly, next I talk about the new bow tricks that I'm using, the new Sheikah Slate textures that phantomeye made for us, the updates to Cryonis and Stasis. I give Jope some credit for helping with the remote bombs. I talk about the updates to the paraglider, how I added these champion cooldown timers and stamina wheel to the screen, all totaling over 40 minutes of content. And then finally, the big announcement. I'm going to show you what I have here. Keep in mind that it's unfinished. Okay, I need to clear something up real quick. Lately, I've been getting even more comments and DMs from people who are disappointed that this data pack isn't multiplayer compatible. And I'm really sorry, but I can't stress enough how impractical it would be to make that change. First, I would have to build a whole scoreboard ID system just to track which custom entities belong to which players. Maybe I'd start with something small, like making the paraglider multiplayer compatible, but eventually I'd need to update hundreds of MC function files, each requiring very specific changes. That would take weeks, if not months, just to get the basics working, not to mention all the time I would spend fixing all of the inevitable bugs. And that's just the actual coding side of it. I'd also need to figure out how to announce that I'm making this change in the first place. Considering the amount of work it would take and what it would mean for you guys, the players, I'd probably decide that a change like this needs to be divulged as a grand reveal or some kind of big announcement. Besides, me being the megastar YouTuber that I am, how could I pass up the opportunity to be overly dramatic about something like this? But then I'd probably get stuck for months actually doing the work, and then I'd get stuck figuring out how to explain some other really complicated changes that would also be in that video. But since I'd be going over all the code with a fine-tooth comb anyway, I'd probably find a lot more things to upgrade. And that video would become so big that I would have to split it into 2 separate videos, which means I would have 2 videos worth of complicated stuff to figure out how to explain, causing more delays. In case it was unclear, because I didn't get to add some of the most important tweaks, that segment was meant to announce that the Datapack is officially multiplayer compatible, and I've been lying to you guys for a while now. I was so excited to put this at the end of that lost video. With a few more time and tweaks, I felt that that moment had the potential to be the highlight of my whole channel up to that point. Can you imagine that at the end of a 55-minute video? It would have been a real finale to the video and to this phase of the project. I've been talking to Grazi about how excited I was to announce multiplayer compatibility since not long after I met him. One day before the hard drive crashed, I actually pointed out to him that he doesn't know a version of me that hasn't been working on this video. Before I keep rambling, I need to give credit, and luckily I found a copy of this audio segment. Here, check it. Thank you to Carissa, also known as justpeachyplays, for helping me film the shrine section. I had a lot of fun being in this video of hers, so go give that a watch, and then go watch the rest of her content. She told me I'm not allowed to watch her videos, so I need y'all to tell me if they're good. Plus, I'm always a fan of helping out smaller channels. For context, her channel is about 3 times the size of my own. I was going to add another twist or two to the joke, but since the iteration without that joke is one of the few surviving files I have, it felt too historic not to share. I also need to give credit to Horoltum and Grazi for helping me build that custom shrine. At the end of the video, I talked about what was next for the project. Some of those plans are now different, but here's what to expect. Now that I'm no longer spending all my time editing a video, I can make some real, solid progress on the Datapack itself. In fact, I already have. The Datapack is updated to 1.21.4. Phantomeye made these amazing Korok models, and I implemented a bunch of the different puzzle types. 360 Genius and Phantomeye made a Guardian model, and I got the base functionality working within like 3 days. Phantomeye also stepped up and organized a bunch of volunteers to create custom item models for a ton of different Breath of the Wild weapons, and I've been working on making them throwable and stuff. And by the way, if you'd be interested in helping create these models yourself, join my Discord server. Phantom put together a really convenient checklist so people can see what still needs to be done. Also, Grazi released the map. I've gotten a lot of questions about the Datapack since then, so let me answer them here. The plan probably wasn't made clear to you all, but it has always been Grazi finishes the map, he releases the bare bones version, then I can add the Datapack to it and release that version separately. I was not allowed to begin adding the Datapack until it was finished, which makes sense, and it wasn't really considered finished until it was released. Actually, I think they still want to make some tweaks, so even the bare bones map might be getting updates. I'm not sure though. Point is, there is a lot of work still to be done before the Datapack version of the map is released. You might be saying, but you've made early releases before, why not just release what you have as it is right now? I actually was going to make an early public release, but it's becoming clear that people just want to use it to play with the Breath of the Wild features on the map before there is a version of the map that's actually ready for it. I don't like that thought. If I felt that the map and the Datapack were ready to be used together, we would have already released it. I don't really want a No Man's Sky situation here. Besides, if I were to make an early release right now, I don't think y'all would get more than a few hours of fun out of it. I've been working on creating the components, but it's only now that I actually have the map that I can even begin putting those components together into some kind of actual game. Also, it's still a little buggy because my ability to test multiplayer compatibility was very limited when multiplayer compatibility was a secret. So I probably won't release an early version of the Datapack before it and the map are ready to be combined. That said, I might create a server for channel members to log on and help me test stuff out. I could use the help. Join my Discord server for updates on that, or if you just like seeing sneak peeks. Also, look out for when I'm live streaming. I'm trying to do it more often because I want to get better at it and I like getting y'all's instant feedback on what I'm working on. And yeah, with all that said, if I don't stop now, I'm going to keep yapping forever. I don't know how to be sincere without sounding cringe, but I really am grateful for all of you, and I'm sorry that I couldn't post that video like I promised. In the arms of